2, 1. Good evening, everyone. How are we doing tonight? So excited to have another awesome conversation with y'all about a really cool topic. Thanks to Jacob. Jacob Toussaint brought this idea up, and this is a fun one. We've titled it. Well, the title is "When You Thought You Were Right, but Really You Were Wrong," and I think we should retitle it "When You Thought You Were Right, but You Were Really Wrong."
Really
wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we're just kind of waiting to jump in here, write your thoughts, write your comments, write your questions, just to get this dialogue going. What's up, Tyler?
Hey, Tyler.
Dude.
Lindsay and Amanda, Carlos. Hey, guys. We're glad you're joining us. Always keeping in mind that this is a public Facebook page, so we want you to feel open. It's a safe, non-judgmental environment to share, but keep in mind that we can't protect your personal privacy, so be careful what you do share so that you're not overly exposing yourself and then have oh crap moments later.
Yeah, don't give your bank information.
Don't give your bank information.
I probably won't.
No. Don't share the nitty-gritty.
Right.
We're ready.
We're going to jump right in. Awesome.
First question from Tyler. What do you do if you're always right? Talk to your wife.
Yeah, check in with Katie on that one.
Check in with Katie on that one.
I'd be curious on what she thinks. That's good, though.
Okay.
To do if you're always right. Yeah, so that's kind of exactly how our communication style was for a long time.
Couple years.
5 years
of
our marriage.
Yeah.
Of our marriage. We've been married 7 years. About to go to 8.
About to go to 8. Yeah. Almost 8 in a month.
So probably more than 5. But anyway, that was the heartbeat of really the way I approached my communication style. And I thought I was
true. You were wrong.
I thought I was a good communicator. I did. And then, no, the truth is the truth. It's when I, my professional life, prior to getting married was, I was born and raised on a construction site, more or less, and so our communication style out there was ruthless with each other. If we wanted something done, we would go at it until it got done. The problem was that didn't translate very well to married life.
No.
So I love this topic of when you thought you were right, but you were really wrong.
Yeah. So one of the questions we want to ask you and have you guys write in on before we share a little bit about ourselves and kind of what we've learned on this journey is there can be times when you are in conflict or you're in hard conversation and inside yourself, you start to sense that you have switched over to debating. And you've switched over to trying to prove your point. Mm-hmm. And even though you sense it in yourself, there's this awareness that you're doing it, you go into the mode of I don't care. The I don't give a mode. And how do you, what are your cues that you ignore? Because we all have them. Yeah. So for me personally, I kind of come with this self-defense mechanism of if I can over-intellectualize this, I can win. And so I know when I go to that place of proving myself, I am overriding what God has instilled in me to make me slow down, to humble myself so that I can hear you. So for me, I know that as soon as I go to a place of trying to over-intellectualize Tony, I'm already losing. We've already lost the game.
Yeah.
So, but I have to be aware that I'm doing that. So do you guys have any things inside yourself that you've switched into the I don't care mode? I just want to be right, no matter how much this hurts us in the end. And you know that it's going to hurt in the end. You know it's not going to have a good product in the end.
Yeah.
But you're suppressing something. And I think it's when we can turn those cues on and pay attention to them and not just override them that we start to see change happen in our conversation and in our intimacy as well.
Yeah.
So go ahead and write that in if you feel comfortable too. What is your cue? What's that thing that pops up inside you? Is it your heart starts racing? Is it you have I sound like my mother? Or is it what is it that for you just makes you go into, or does something that your spouse say triggers you to go into, sets you off and makes you go into that I don't care. I don't care if this hurts you mode. I don't care if I'm wrong.
Yeah. It's amazing how in my emotions can like flare up against the person that I love the most. It's like, it doesn't even make sense that should even happen,
Right.
but it does.
Right.
And so I love that question of like, what are the things that I can be on guard for and pinpoint as it's happening in the moment and be like, hold on a second. Because we were talking a little bit earlier about framing a conversation in our marriage from a unified standpoint, saying this is our goal. We have a goal together to create a legacy of love. We have a goal. Let's make it simple. We have a goal for parenting to be on the exact same page. Yeah. Regardless. So if
doesn't mean we don't talk about it later.
No, we talk about it.
We talk about it.
But in the moment, if one of our children is back talking the other, we don't wait for the child and the other spouse to battle it out and then kind of like come in and be the good guy to the kid, right? That's never good.
Right.
So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think part of what he's saying is that in your marriage, if you have a goal that you're working towards, when you're in conflict or when you're in disagreement and you find yourself, wanting to prove your point that you're right, and you're going to toss caution to the wind, or you're going to toss reason to the wind and just push down the field, your spouse becomes the opponent. And the moment your spouse becomes the opponent, you've already lost, because your marriage is losing in that moment. So you may think you're right, and you may be right.
Yeah, you might be right.
You might be right. But if the way you're
because
going
like Tyler, he's always right.
Right. But if the way you're going about it is demeaning or devaluing or minimizing what God can do through the two of you, in any way, shape, or form, you've already lost, because now the goal, you're supposed to be working together in that conflict to get to the goal, not to win the conflict. And so that's something we have to be aware of. So Tyler, you had a really good question. Which is better? Communicate raw, unfiltered feelings, perspectives, no matter how hard it is to say, or filter it. Great question.
Communicate raw, unfiltered feelings, perspectives, no matter how hard.
Which is better? Okay, so here's what I would say first and foremost.
Both and.
Both and. Yeah. That's a total both and here's why. There has to be trust established in order to do raw, unfiltered. Like, I think at this point with Tony, there are moments, depending on the season of life we're in, where I know I can just straight shoot and be like, look, this is how this is making me feel. And when you do this, this is what it's like. And here's where I'm at. And it's just raw and it's unfiltered. But there's a degree of evidence there that he knows my heart. And if you haven't worked that out in your communication, where you guys know, I've got my husband or my wife has my back. Even if we're disagreeing, even if I'm wrong, even if they're wrong, we have each other's back. Once you have that bed of trust for that, then raw and unfiltered, I mean, you want to be kind, but raw and unfiltered can happen in a really productive way.
Yeah. Like we just had a really hard conversation last week about something that I am insanely passionate about. And in that conversation was incredibly uncomfortable for me, but Adele was being very honest, and I wouldn't say unfiltered, but her honesty was very clear, and I had to stop. So Carlos, you just asked a great question. How do we break those bad habits of reacting like we're on autopilot?
Great question.
Can so easily go into, I want to react to her point of view. And so what do? My first thing is I honestly have to stop. I just kind of stop, and she will think that I've checked out.
Yeah, I'll be like, so you're done now?
Yeah. Which is like her way of jabbing me.
It's not good.
It's like makes it even worse in the moment, because I'm like, do that. So I check out for a second, because I'm like doing a systems analysis in my brain and my emotion first to stop my emotion from rising up. So I have to literally tell my body, emotion, stop. And then I have to like clearly think for a moment, and I find the trigger. I find that like
the lie.
I find the ant, like the negative thought, the automatic negative thought that is telling me that Adele's not on my side and that we're in a part, and I kill it. Like I literally like stomp on that thing and I come back to the conversation with a fresh mind, saying we have a common goal, and she sees it from a different perspective, and I see it from a different perspective, and it's not that. We just have to figure out how to do it the best way.
And it doesn't mean that we come to a resolution in that moment. We leave lots, and this is one thing we're going to talk about in the June 30th conference, is that we leave a lot of conversations in disagreement. And I think there's this misconception that just because you're having a hard conversation and you keep having it and coming back to it, whether it's about your finances or it's about sex or it's about whatever, that you have to be in agreement. Agreement is a process and it's a journey. And as long as you're staying true to that goal and believing that the person has your back, you'll get there with prayer. With prayer. The other thing I get to watch Tony do that's really cool is he's learned over time, and he's taught me this, is to not take offense to the feedback our partner is giving us in those moments. So like Carlos, with your question, one thing that Tony lets me do is he lets me say to him, like, see, you're doing it right now. See, you're shutting down right now.
I'm not shutting down. Thirsty.
He's thirsty. But he lets me do that, and instead of being like, don't tell me what I'm doing, he is like, okay, he evaluates it. Is there something I can learn from this person who says they love me in this moment?
Yeah.
Okay, so we had another question. Tony, give it a shot.
Jamal, what's up, man? How you doing? Question, how should you talk about things that should have been resolved already? Like the same conversation over and over with no results. Well, I think you were just kind of talking about that.
Yeah.
Like you have to be patient, right? But it's like, it's coming back to, look, are our heads together? Are we in agreement? Like we want to commit to having $1,000 in our savings account. Are we in agreement on that? Like that's our starting point for turning our finances around.
Yes.
And if it is, then we need to hold each other accountable to that goal, and not let our emotions rule the conversation so much. I
also think couples are afraid of this concept of compromise. Like, we've been inundated with this idea that we're supposed to compromise, that a marriage is 50-50. So if you have conversations that you keep coming back to that should be resolved by now, I totally get it, and it sucks. But don't be so quick to go to that place in your head where it's like, oh, because we keep coming back to this, maybe we weren't meant to be, or maybe we're never going to see eye to eye on this. So my first question is, how have you invited the Lord into that process? That's my first question. Because if you keep coming back to this conversation, but you're not sealing that conversation in prayer, you're going to keep coming back to it with the same result. It's when we welcome the Holy Spirit into those problems that we see a new process and we see a new product. And so, I mean, I hope you guys are coming on June 30th, because we're literally going to demonstrate for you, like on stage with a couple, like how to do that, what that actually looks like in conversation. And it's not easy, and it takes practice, and it's totally awkward. But disagreement can, if you're not careful, it'll look like this and then this, like, oh, we were never meant to be, or we're never going to see eye to eye, or you're never going to agree with me, you're never going to have my back. And we go to these automatic thoughts that are all or nothing.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to how do you revisit the conversation when it didn't go well the time before?
Yeah.
Or if there's still if you're still super frustrated with your partner because of X, Y, or Z, how do you revisit it? And then if you don't revisit it right away and a couple of times passes by, are you now like
avoiding it? You're
avoiding it, or you're holding on to 16 different offenses, which it boils over into an explosion. So how do you?
Are you intentional about revisiting that hard topic that you think you're right on and you think your spouse is wrong on purpose, not just because another crisis has occurred about that topic? So that's something that we do pretty regularly, which is like, are we talking about A, B, C, or D on the regular?
Yeah.
Because these are areas that we struggle with, and not just talking about them when something goes awry with our finances, or something goes awry with, I don't like the way you spoke to that person, or what's going on over here, or there's a trust issue or whatever. So
I love Lindsay just said maybe have a goal check.
Yeah,
which is awesome,
for sure. Lindsay, great suggestion, a goal check. Yeah, hold it accountable to that. There was another question from Kendall. How do you build connection? Yes, first 5 years have been rough, but we want to be more connected. But how? Oh my gosh, Kendall and Corey, we totally understand.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly why we're doing the June 30th conference, is that we experienced that as well. Like it was rough, we loved each other, but we wanted to be deeper connected.
Yeah.
So one thing that you explain really well, if you can kind of talk about it, is communication, the way you physically engage communication. I have like this really dorky scientific way of explaining it, like about attunement and attachment, but Tony has a way better way of just basically like, what do you do as a guy to build connection with me?
You're like, put me on the spot. I'm like, is there an answer that I've given
before?
Yeah,
totally.
Really
when you talk about turning your body towards...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. What has worked for me has been being aware of my body posture and attunement to her physically. So in conversation, like I'm not like this while we're having a hard conversation. I'm forcing myself to sit like this and be in this like moment and lean into it and not be like, whatever, I'm gonna do what you want. But I'll force myself to be present and listen.
And you used to be a pacer. You would pace. During hard conversations, he would get up and walk around, and I'd be like, sit down and look at me, because I needed that connection.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that you've been very intentional about, is to have a deeper connection, is to make eye contact and to touch. It's really hard to say mean things and call people names when you're touching. It's really hard.
I remember the first time we held hands and faced each other when we were arguing.
Oh my gosh.
Which changed the whole argument.
It did.
It forced it to take a soft tone. It forced it to take a humble tone. But that, and then also, Kendall, I think one of the things that, and Corey, what that helped for me was sitting back and being intentional with time. I would come home from a long day of work and want to check out doing what bachelor guys do to check out, which is just to either play video games or, go sit and play some music or watch a movie or whatever. And then Adele would go to bed and I just keep watching TV and I fall asleep on the couch, and then it'd be 3 a.m. and I go upstairs. And it's like, that's not.
I hated that.
And so it didn't lead to anything good. And I'll talk about this at the event in more honesty about where it leads, I think, from when guys check out. Now, it's okay to check out. I'm not saying you don't. I'm saying find the healthy way to do it. But I began to see that as a patterned behavior and say to myself, okay, how do I really want to spend my time if we have a common goal of wanting to build a legacy of love? What am I going to do? What do I actually have to do? And one of those things was I need to re-examine communication
and time management. But so instead of watching a movie or playing video games, it's we're gonna have a conversation. We're gonna hang out. We're gonna have dinner at the table after the kids go to bed, and we're gonna just sit here and have a conversation. Yeah. And that time, and before long, it's like you crave it. Your body needs it, and you're rebuilding intimacy in a completely different way. So and your sex gets better. Yeah, just gonna throw that out there. So it's worth it. It pays off for you to do it.
Yeah, it does. It gets really better because you've created a safe environment for self-expression to happen, which is really what sexuality in action is. Yeah, it's an expression that's happening between two people that should be good.
Yeah.
And but awesome. You need a safe place for that to happen. And so, yeah. Yeah,
so building connection is really important. Lindsay, I love what you say about making room for compromise. Yes, for sure. Definitely. Guys, you were awesome. Look at you all joining in. You're so cool. We got, how should you respond when your spouse wants to talk about something and you're not at the point where you are ready to talk? Oh, guys, you are rocking these questions. Dang, this is so good. Okay, so we endure that a lot. We are not perfect with that one for sure. Okay,
so I think this is a great question because we would start going down a path of questions and conversation that Adele really wanted to talk about, and I didn't. And what I would do as a result is I would immediately switch into debate mode, and I'm going to put an end to this conversation because it doesn't need to happen, and I would throw jabs at her. That would force the conversation to end, and it would like paralyze her.
Well, and also sometimes they were your best attempt to try and help me see what it was like to be on the other side of me, which isn't always pleasant. And so you probably felt disarmed and didn't know how to do that.
Yeah, I didn't, and so I would grasp for straws, and I mean,
Say
if you're
things.
a guy, you probably said, you're acting like your mother or something like that, which don't ever do.
Don't say that.
Good. It doesn't lead to anything good.
It's not good. Don't do that. But I also think if you've agreed, like if you've expressed, like I'm not ready to talk about this, you have to respect that. So the partner has to respect that the other person is saying, I'm not ready to talk about this. But you have a responsibility to come back to that partner. You cannot leave them hanging. So one thing, Tony and I would be having a conversation, and he's an internal processor, so it'd be dead silence, and I'd be like, hello, are you there? And he'd be like, I'm thinking about it, I'm not ready yet. And so I've learned everything in me wants an immediate answer. Everything in me wants the result. I want it resolved, I want the result, I want to know I'm heard, I'm understood. And so I've learned to be content and trust that he will come back to me when he is ready. Yeah. And that's when healing and deeper connection happens. So you've got to respect it, but you've got to own your responsibility to come back to it. That's really important too. Yeah. We have another question. So from Marie, what are you supposed to do when buttons are pushed that trigger one to be angry to the point that it is explosive? We've been there. Yeah, we know that one too. You're not alone.
Yeah, you're not alone.
You are not alone. Okay, so what are you supposed to do when buttons are pushed that trigger one to be angry to the point that it's explosive? So first of all, you need to know your own triggers. You cannot be dependent upon your spouse to not push your triggers. That's the first thing. So Tony, he has a responsibility to not push my triggers if I've shared what they are, but I need to know my triggers so that I'm not letting it get to a place where I am going to be explosive as well. Okay, so that's one piece.
Yeah, like I can't use them against her.
Right.
Just because I know them, why would I use them against her? So that's...
And explosive is, people have different degrees of explosive. So you and your partner need to talk about what is explosive. Like for me, I was raised in a home where yelling happened. So if I'm yelling, Tony, like he was not raised in a home with yelling. So that may be explosive. But also you may be talking more about like throwing things or getting physical. And so you guys have to have conversations during times that are not tension filled to explore what is your definition of explosive and to explore what your triggers are.
That's really good.
You know what I'm saying? Thanks. So you get what I'm saying? Like you need to have times in not tension where you've already explored this. Like what is your definition of explosive? What is your expectation of me when I start to, because like if I'm getting there, Tony, one thing I had to learn is he would be able to like look at me and be like, and I just knew like I'm there. And I didn't like that, but I knew that that was his definition of explosive. And if I pushed it, I would push him away. So we had to explore that during non-tension times and talk about that. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, find a way to. Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard, especially if you're talking about a male, because we're so we can be so isolated with our emotions. So that we don't even want to have a conversation about conversations because that's like, well, I'm not going to have a conversation about conversations. But you need to do it if you're going to figure out how to have. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's finding a balance and finding out a way. Okay, how okay, this is my spouse. I want to figure out how to have healthy dialogue.
Yeah. So
you just kind of start building that bridge.
And I think a part of it comes back to the whole conversation we're having tonight is what do you do when you realize you were wrong? And so if you have been explosive, how do you remedy that? Like, I will never forget, there were a time when I was pregnant with our first child. So I was very hormonal, so don't judge me. But I literally got in the car. Like, I walked out of the apartment, got out in the car and drove around the neighborhood. I was too scared to drive anywhere else because I knew I was upset. So I just drove around the neighborhood the whole time. I was explosive. I busted out of the house, got in the car, stormed off. I came back to find a husband who was sitting there waiting and was like, what can we do better? Right? Like that, nothing about me and my upbringing was prepared for that. But he honored me and respected me in that moment. And it showed me like, okay, even though you just exploded and you were wrong, I'm going to love you in your hot mess. And I think that's the piece that God does with us, is that we know that he loves us regardless of our flaws, regardless of our failures, and he still has arms that are wide and open. And if we, with his supernatural strength, can do that for each other, it makes it so much easier when we are wrong to be like, ugh, sorry, I just stormed out on you. Sorry, like, that's a trigger for you. Oh, me walking out, that's a trigger for you? Yeah, I definitely just did that to you. I'm so sorry. And so it makes it easier to come back and ask for forgiveness.
Yeah, that's so good.
You're so sweet. He's married to me. He has to say it.
I do.
No, you can disagree. But I think one thing I want to leave you guys with as we kind of close up, because we don't want to take up too much time with these discussions, is how do you use forgiveness? And this is one thing we're also going to talk about, hopefully, if it fits into the whole content for June 30th, is forgiveness something that you've adopted in your marriage when crisis occurs, when you are in oh shit moments and you're like, I may lose this person? Or is it something that you do on a daily basis? So Tony called the other day, last week, and I hadn't eaten. I was tired. I was exhausted. I had been bombarded with text messages all day. I'd been helping people all day. And I literally was like, coming at him like he had done something wrong. Okay. Now it did. And I had a moment where I was like, he can handle it. He hasn't had a day like mine in my head. I can feed that thought, or I can humble myself and write back to him and be like, babe, here's why I did that. That's no explanation. You shouldn't have received that from me. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? And that's what I did. Okay. That's what I did. Not because I'm right, not because that's what I should do, but because it created an opportunity for him to then respond back to me and comfort me, to love me in my flaw, and to give me an example of the tangible love of God, which is, I love you no matter what. We all make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And so can forgiveness be part of how you handle when you were wrong, but you thought you were right?
Great question.
Yeah. All right, guys. You guys are awesome. Your questions tonight were killer.
Yeah, they were really good.
It was so good.
Yeah.
Thanks for writing in and joining us. It was really awesome.
Well, we hope it's been helpful. It's been fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll do this again.
Yeah.
Let's do it again next Monday.
Yeah. Next Tuesday. It's Tuesday. Today's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
And keep in mind, anything we've shared with you is just another perspective. Yep. It's not our gospel. It's not the gospel. It's just another perspective. And so we just always are putting that out there, that it's another perspective, and we welcome yours as well. And you're going to have your own way of doing things. And we know that, and we're glad. So you guys are awesome. secondmilelife.org for tickets to the June 30th event at the Sheraton Oceanfront. When you buy your tickets, you get entered to win a free 2-night getaway to Wintergreen. All right.
Or it's right here on the Facebook page, too.
Oh, yeah. You can do that. You can buy it on the Facebook page. Okay. You guys are awesome. We'll see you next week.
See y'all.
Bye.